Great. Okay, well, welcome everybody to the first ever Node.js user feedback public session. We're gonna have a public session, public feedback. We've reached out to members throughout the Node community and invited them to come and share their experiences, their feedback around the project. Today, we're going to be focusing on an initiative that we've taken up on behalf of the benchmarking working group. So the benchmarking working group reached out to the community committee, and largely the user feedback group was formed around solving this initial first challenge of doing some outreach to the community and getting feedback on what the priorities are around benchmarking and what are the important considerations as we're establishing the benchmarking. Our collective understanding of how performant the JS project is. So really exciting initiative for us, and it's great to sort of take this full circle and bring it to the overall community. So I'm Dan Shaw. I lead this initiative inside of the ComCom user feedback, and let me go back to Zoom here real quick and just kind of go around the list and let folks introduce themselves. So Tierney, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Tierney Sarin. I'm co-chair of the community committee, and I'm a developer advocate at NodeSource.
Awesome. Michael Dawson.
I'm Michael Dawson. I'm active throughout the community, chair of the TSC, member of the ComCom committee, and the champion for the strategic initiative within the ComCom to get more user feedback. And this is one of the things we're trying to do on that front.
Great. We have a couple new attendees. I'm gonna go step away from looking at attendees. Managing expectations of attendees. Folks that are joining the Zoom meeting are going to be live and part of the public feedback session. If you're just here to watch, we have a live simulcast to YouTube, and we'll be monitoring the chat and discussion on YouTube. But welcome everybody. This is a public session, so most of all, we want you to recognize that you're in a recorded and broadcasted medium. All right.
I can see that two of our new joinees are invitees from the end users, which is great. So welcome, Aaron and Nikolai.
Great. Aaron and Nikolai, we're just getting started here and going around and getting everybody introduced. So let me continue the introductions with Tracy.
Hi, I am Tracy Hinds. I am a member of the community committee, also a member of the moderation team, and also now the leadership subcommittee chair. Happy to be here. I think these are feedback initiative in general is a really powerful thing. So I'm excited to go through this meeting.
Great. Mihai?
Yeah, hi, I'm Mihai Ene-Pietrosanu. I'm a new member of user feedback and currently a project manager in PMI Portland. Thank you.
Thank you, Mihai. All right, and so that's kind of the Node.js team that's here, and I want to introduce our end users that we've invited today. I'll start with Bradley Farias.
Hi, I'm Bradley Farias. I work at GoDaddy, and we've just been using Node for pretty much everything now, so we've got the full stack experience you'd expect from a larger corporation using it.
Awesome, thank you. And Joel Chen.
Hi, good morning. I'm from Walmart Labs. I'm a principal architect of the customer engineering web platform at Walmart Labs. we've been using Node.js for a couple of years now, but well, 2 years ago, I completely switched the entire web platform from Java backend to Node.js. So the entire Walmart.com is now running on Node.js for the front end stuff. And I'm here as a user to contribute with the feedbacks. Thank you.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thanks, Joel. And Aaron Bartell, sorry.
That's okay. I've been called worse. My name is Aaron Bartell. I'm with Kringle Tech. I'm representing, in part, the IBMI platform, formerly known as the AS400. So Node.js was made available on IBMI a few years ago, and I get involved in collaborating with other IBMers and helping to formulate what Node.js looks like on IBMI. For example, today I find myself compiling the database adapter for DB2 for Node on IBMI, working through the automation of that and putting it into a container to make it more simple. Thank you.
Very cool. And Nikolai.
Hey, I'm Nikolai from Grid Dynamics. I'm located in St. Petersburg, Russia now, working in San Francisco. We are doing re-platforming for e-commerce from American Eagle, Jesse, Toys R Us, and others. So we are using Node.js or with Java and trying to use only Node.js without Java, with microservices. Nice. Yeah.
I'd like to ask, were the invites sent out to end user feedback people who connected through the end user feedback initiative?
That's correct. So we have an issue that we've been tracking and outreach there, and a mailing list set up under Node.js.org, and the invitees were sent out to those who had raised their hands and responded to that list.
Awesome. So I should also probably then say I'm here for NodeSource as well, because I raised NodeSource's hand for that list as well. So yeah, I'm here to represent NodeSource.
Okay,
as well.
Right. That's right. You were.
Yeah. So we do kind of Node.js runtime, and then a npm registry drop-in replacement. So yeah, and both are built with Node. A lot of pretty big stack. So.
Great. And so my request to you, Tierney, is when you're engaging, you have a responsibility to be a chair and a representative of the community committee today, and just make sure you self-identify when you're changing this.
Yes,
okay?
I know.
Next time you should put the video on and have a hat you can change.
I could change my shirt, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, no, I sent out an invite to everybody on the end user representative list. I may have skipped you, Tierney, just because I knew you were going to be there anyway. But
yeah, of course.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and get started. What I'd like to do is, so everyone has framing, is really let Michael Dawson kick us off with an introduction to what the benchmarking working group is. And what we try to achieve inside of the benchmarking working group for the Node.js project.
Okay, so let me share my screen. Share screen. There we go. A screen. This guy, I think, is it. So you should all be able to. I haven't prepared a slide deck or anything like that. I'm just going to walk through. Showing a little bit of the benchmarking repo and just sort of talk to some of the things that we've been working on and focusing on. The focus of the overall working group, to start with the mandate, is that really we want to track and evangelize performance gains between releases and avoid performance regressions. This is based on the recognition that performance is important to end users. Really you want to squeeze the most you can out of the money you've invested in your hardware. And by making sure Node runs as efficiently and as quickly as possible, we help you do that. And we also want to avoid any surprises when you upgrade from one release to the next. The focus of the way that we've been working on that so far is to define important use cases. And these are the use cases that we have defined. So, backend API services, service-oriented architectures, microservice-based applications, generating serving dynamic web page content, single page applications, agents and data collectors, web developer tooling, and small scripts. And we'll use these set of use cases to try and drive the benchmarks that we put in place. So one thing, I'll mention to our end users, if you have a use case that doesn't fit into one of these, it's important for you to let us know that so that we can factor in, the additional use cases into the work that we do here. It would also be interested to sort of, get feedback. I think we did through some of the surveys, but if you're talking about, some of your challenges and so forth with us, to let us know which of the use cases you fall into, I think will also help us frame that a little bit. So those are the use cases. We also define a number of key runtime attributes. So these are things we believe are important in terms of, they may be applicable to one or more of those use cases, but we think are generally why people use Node.js and are important to maintain. So things like, short start and stop time, our footprint being low, both, before you've used it and afterwards, not using a lot of CPU when we're idle, making sure that we can serve a lot of, a high throughput of HTTP requests, making sure that our GC load and allocation throughput are good, making sure that we don't have large pause times, and then keeping things like the install package size and the size on disk once installed also being, small, which is one of our advantages over other runtimes. So it's the combination of those use cases and those key runtime attributes that lets us say, okay, now we want to build out, and I see I got my link wrong there. I'm going to have to fix that. That lets us drive the matrix that says, okay, what do we want to run? Are we running it already? And if not, what are we going to add to run that? So we have this set of use cases, which basically say, okay, for the use cases, what benchmarks do we have running in our nightly runs to cover that? And you can see we have a number which are still open. So we still have work to do. This is an area where people can get involved and contribute. We've got Acme Air, which came out of there's an equivalent Acme Air for Java, simulates an airline transaction system. And it's intended to represent, a whole end user application, going out to the database, interacting with the user over the web to get to track our performance on key attributes for that. We have things that check out some of the key attributes, like making sure that we can require things quickly, because if you're running small scripts, you don't want to spend a lot of time pulling in the pieces you need. You need to be able to do that quickly. And then, things like starting up and stopping, we have a start and stop. And again, some of those existing ones map to the key attributes as well, but really this is a work in progress. But that's the general approach of the benchmarking work group in terms of, what we want to achieve, how we're looking to do that. If we go into benchmarking.nodejs.org, you can see the charts that we have. We run every night the benchmarks that I was talking about across a number of releases. And you can see, we have results of 4x, 6x, 8x, and Canary, as well as master. And then, we basically get an extra dot in this chart published every night. And we can use this to track the performance and say, okay, well, we've got something we need to investigate. So for example, this required cached is a case where it's decreased a little while ago, and we just realized, and now we need to go and say, well, wait a sec, what's going on? Let's investigate that, figure out whether it's actually planned, it's okay, or whether it's a problem. We can see that generally, we've had increasing performance over time. If we look at Acme Air, as well as Node DCIS, which is another benchmark sort of whole system web front end, Node.js backend system that we've been tracking. And so that's a good thing. It's sort of the data confirms that we're making progress, which is, what we'd hoped before. We currently have a number of dedicated machines to run these benchmarks on. One from SoftLayer, donated by IBM, and 2 donated by Intel, and hosted at Nearform, where we can, use those machines, being the fact that they're sort of dedicated hardware machines versus virtual machines where they might be more efficient to do repeatable runs. There is a bit of a framework for generating and plotting the charts, but I think that's most of what's sort of interested in the context. And as part of trying to figure out, you know, the benchmarks we should work on, what kind of stuff we should pull into those benchmarks, we had a number of questions, and that was the genesis of the Node benchmarking survey, which Dan's going to take us through some of the results. And, you know, maybe we'd like to discuss with you to get, you know, an online discussion of some of those questions versus a survey where it's sort of a one direction as the first sort of end user feedback discussion. We'll have other similar ones, and, you know, maybe some more sort of open-ended questions as well, sessions, but we thought this would be a good one since the survey just closed, and it was a good way to sort of add to the data that we've got out of that survey. So back over to Dan.
Join us on Tuesday, February 20th at IndexConf for deeper questions.
That's right. That's the next time that we're going to have an opportunity to again talk to people directly. We have a session scheduled for the second session of the day. So yes, if you're in San Francisco, it's free registration for that community day. So join us there, and if you want, stay for the rest of the conference.
Yeah, the question, exactly what time is the meeting going to be start at the IndexConf for the Node meetup?
It starts at 2 o'clock and goes to 6.
Okay, thank you.
User feedback should be around 4. That's what I've been ballparking for.
It's like, I think we have about a half hour for the intro, about an hour for the sort of work groups and strategic initiatives. So I think you're about right, because I factored in some breaks as well. I don't have the exact timing there, but that sounds pretty close. Yeah. So I think that's the introduction to the benchmarking work group that I had.
Great. Well, before we move on to the benchmarking working group data, I wanted to make sure I opened the forum to you know, our end users to just get your feedback directly on benchmarking. So inside of the internal chat, I've posted a link to, you know, benchmarking.nodejs.org. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to post links to the YouTube chat. The block links.
Can you share the link in the Zoom chat?
Sure, I can go back to sharing that again. Or you meant in I was
in the chat, just the
right.
Zoom chat.
For those on the YouTube, I can just share my screen again, and you can see the link at the top there. So if you want to go there directly, you can. The link is what I've highlighted at the top.
So yeah, Aaron, Joel, Bradley, and Nikolai, I'm just wondering, Marks, you know, is this a resource that you're interested in using? And if so, you know, love to hear why. You know, the benchmarking, you know, is primarily, you know, for us to keep things sane, to make sure that we're not regressing. But you know, it's always nice to see that you know, folks are really you know, paying attention to and utilizing the resources that we provide publicly.
This is Aaron Bartell. Yeah, so I see this as being advantageous for the IBMI community. I go to a number of conferences every year and talk about Node.js and its performance, and this will be a useful resource to show people. The majority of the people I'm talking to, though, are running Node on IBMI, so I'll need to dig into this further to see if we can put together a testing solution that's run on the IBMI platform to see how it's performing there. I'm guessing it's going to be different. It's got an environment on it that's much like AIX. It's called the PACE environment, PASE. So that might be a to-do on my end.
Yeah, that's certainly, you know, if you need help setting up something, you know, if you want to run the same benchmarks on IBMI, you know, let me know. That's something I can help you with. Give you access to our scripts and so forth. That, you know, they're all, the scripts are all available in the benchmarking repo to actually run the different benchmarks. But there's some additional logic I could give you from the community CI jobs, that sort of how they run together and then publish the results.
Okay,
yeah,
that'd be great.
This is Joe Chen. Yeah, we actually keep internal benchmarks also, but it's not like not well maintained. It's just every time there's a major node release, then I would go and try to dig it up and try to remember how to run them and try to get an idea of like a ballpark of how much performance we can get from a major node upgrade. Yeah, so this is very useful.
That raises an interesting question. Should we kind of provide a way to go and benchmark for like userland? Would that be something helpful?
Yeah, I think you and Michael and myself are all jumping on that same question.
Right. Like, I was going to ask, like, if that's representative of your workload, is there something that you could contribute that we could run regularly that would cover off more of our matrix? Or provide, even if it covers some ones that, say the same area of Acme Air, it may cover it differently, more completely. So if it's something that we could run, we'd be interested in evaluating and looking at that.
Yeah, I'm happy to look into maybe the service-oriented architecture, because that's one of the things that we are interested in a lot, because most of our applications, majority of work they do is actually making service calls to the backend microservices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. If you could, if you basically came up with like, here's some scripts or the files we need to run some nightly testing on something that represents your microservice usage, that would be really, really valuable to us.
Yeah, sure.
Joel, I know kind of the ancient history of the Walmart platform, but when we're saying SOA, were you talking XML?
No, we are. Okay. So we have.
So we've evolved beyond that. Good. Okay.
There are still a few services out there that's on XML using the SOAP protocol, but no, I did not want to touch that at all.
Okay.
So everything is kind of based on a HTTP protocol, but we do have our internal security checks such that any client has to register for a service and then get a unique key, and then you have to use that key to sign some of your HTTP headers in order to be able to call services.
Got it. So just to expand the framing and why Tierney and Michael and I got so excited. Part of what the V8 team has begun doing in terms of benchmarking V8. And a lot of our performance characteristics are dependent on the VM that we bind to, which is Google's Chrome V8. So that the V8 team has shifted from micro benchmarks to benchmarking real world application code, and we just introduced the entire tooling benchmarking suite. So incorporating Babel and Webpack, and I forget what else is in tooling. Michael, maybe you could fill in the blanks there.
To be honest, I don't have the list off the top of my head.
All right. The things like Babel and Webpack, big projects that a lot of people are using, are incorporated in this battery of benchmarks. Taking that real world experience and applying that. So if we can collaborate with you to extract anything that's internal or proprietary out of those benchmarks, then I think this is a natural extension of us beginning to really put into our CI/CD and benchmarking infrastructure real world Node. So it's a great opportunity for collaboration. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. And I just threw up on the screen the list of what's in the benchmark there.
There it is.
So like you said, Babel, Babylon, Chai, but a number of things that are commonly used in the web tooling side of things.
One thing that we do that we have a lot of trouble with in terms of performance is actually styleless compiling. Internally, we use SAS to write our CSS. And then we have to compile these massive styles, and some of the deeply nested trees, they take a huge amount of time. So initially, when we were using the Sass compiler, our build was running in upwards of like hours because it's some nested structures. So we had to actually fork the Sass compiler and make some kind of adjustments to it to get our CSS compiling run faster.
Okay, so maybe if you comment, like open a comment, so it almost sounds like that Sass compiler would be something you might like in the web tooling benchmark. Is that?
Can it go in there? I guess it could. It kind of exceeds
very difficult.
Right, it exceeds the interest of V8 because that Sass compiler is a native module, and
okay, right, yep.
Key pain points, and one of the as we were building out an API, heard repeatedly from end users, oh my goodness, this module is a pain.
Okay, right.
So, if I recall correctly, it even even just moving it forward into a more modern code base, it's partially not maintained. It's a really popular module in a really weird space that I'd kind of expected that pain to produce more alternatives than it has. But it's good to hear that we need to give that attention.
So there is one comment that GoDaddy has had about this web tooling benchmark. If you go and look at how it runs, all of these benchmarks are requiring that whatever they run be synchronous. So that's the reason Webpack is not on here. So we've actually got our own stuff going separate of this. We have some build farms that we run Webpack in and Node Sass, probably similar to Walmart. And so we can probably extend, we have it open source, but that's only one part of our issue is these web tooling. Another big part for us at least has been memory usage. When we're having everything cached at pretty much every node of our service-oriented architecture when we can. And so for us, maybe memory benchmarks are more interesting than these time benchmarks.
Right. So I guess it sounds like there's two areas. One, like maybe you'll be able to contribute additional benchmark we might want to be running for the web tooling side, but then also if you have some specific things around memory in terms of measuring it and stuff like that, that would also be a good thing to get a discussion with the benchmarking work group going, because we the only place we measure Node.js memory usage is in Acme, or sort of the before and after, and what you're describing I think is quite a different use case, so it might be a good addition.
Bradley, is there a generalized way? When we talk about caching, that's a threshold at an application system layer that you would control. So what are the bounds that you would look for there?
So we have multi-tiered caches in particular. So garbage collection can become a problem once we get into several gigabytes in size for our caches. Some of them are running at 8 gigs for their cache size.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I know that I've heard from folks at Netflix in particular and other folks that use sort of buffer internal caching strategies that that it can be a pain point to just sort of to grapple. I kind of assume that it's in part because we're all sort of rolling our own rather than leaning on some central known mechanism that we can say, oh, okay, I kind of expect it to perform this way. But I think that there's a great opportunity to begin exploring the benchmarking of memory usage, taking some of these inputs and, making sure that we're at least expressing expected behavior, right? Or beginning to understand that behavior.
Yep.
Are we going to be reviewing the feedback or the survey results, because we have 20 minutes left?
Yep. Just going to move this along. Great feedback. Really excited about those outcomes. And, internally, one of our, biggest objectives here is to establish that channel, but also to take away, things like this for everybody.
Yeah. And just before we move on, the one thing I would,
right.
So I'd encourage, Bradley and Joel, if you have benchmarks you want to pursue the discussion with the benchmarking work group, you can either open an issue in the benchmarking work group to describe that's probably the best way. Mm-hmm. If you need a little bit of help to get started on that front, feel free to reach out to me and I'll help do a translation if we need to do that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Let's go ahead and get started. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So, we went through the survey. I'm going to cherry pick some of these questions here in the survey and, ask around. The number of applications in production, I think we probably skip over, and unless anyone really wants to dive into that, I'd like to get into some of the more technical things.
I do think something that we could improve on for the future is correlating that with size of company, because a smaller company isn't going to have more than 100 applications in production. So I think that might be a good correlation.
So next week, we're going to reconvene as a team with Greg Wallace and go back into the survey details. So, Tierney, let's hold sort of meta feedback on survey and things that we can improve for next year to that session. Okay. All right. So, Node in production. I actually want to stop on this one because I'm really happy with the results. Though it does surprise me a little bit, especially in production workflows. So in terms of where folks are in production, is the answer of what are you using here? Does that line up with where folks are?
I'd say yes. We generally have a lag time with LTS, but that's more, we have a large number of applications. It's very hard for us to move over, even on 6 months cadence.
Sure.
To things.
So when you say a lag, is it, what's your lag, just roughly?
If there are no breaking changes, our lag is generally around 2 months. We actually tell people not to release into production for that first month while we just kind of let it sit. Sure. And then have it in dev test for that time and then migrate over a month or so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for us, because we're e-commerce side, things are a little more critical. So we generally have a longer lag time. Whenever there's a new version, I would actually go and start using it, and then we would start using it for development. And then once a version is promoted to LTS, then we would start testing it in the platform internally, and then we would go find some less critical apps to start testing it in the production. And then once we are more confident, then we start getting more apps to upgrade. So as right now we are probably half on 6 and 8.
Well,
okay. So I do have a question, because we're actually testing before the release of LTS in dev. Are you doing that, Joel?
Yeah. So right now I'm kind of generally when there's an odd number release, I would start using it for my own development and trying out. And then once the odd number goes to the even number, then I would start using it more.
That's great.
I generally don't ask any actual app that's in production to start testing until a version has been promoted to LTS.
Right.
I'd like to ask in your production environments with some of our major upgrades or even patch upgrades or a security patch. How do you handle that? Is it just a simpler bump, or how do you handle that?
So our production deployment, the deployment itself is a immutable binary, and the Node version is locked in. So if anytime we do a rollback, the Node version, the runtime is also gets rolled back. Mm-hmm. So in order for us to do any kind of upgrade, even a patch version of Node for any app in production, we actually have to go through our entire update, pull request, and then CI/CD, and then QA test, and then QA sign off, and then deploy.
Gotcha.
We're pretty much the same. We've got that Docker workflow for most things.
So I want to make sure that we also gave some time to Aaron and Nikolai. How are you guys doing with regard to version adoption?
This is Aaron Bartell. The IBMI just recently got 8.x. It's in beta right now. It's not available publicly, but I've been testing it. Been very pleased with it. Most of the platforms on 6.x, and then there's some adoption still of 4.x.
Sure.
Oh, another thing I want to add is we have a lot of telemetry data logging. So anytime we actually update anything like the Node version or any major library, we actually would be monitoring our logs much more careful. And in the past, we've had a few incidents where after we upgrade to a Node version, we notice like more errors or things are slower, and then we have to roll back. So that's one of our safeguards after we deploy it with a Node update, for example, to a production.
And in those situations, do you have workflows that would allow you to go and alert the Node.js core team? Is that possible? Does that happen?
But generally, that would be me. So if we notice anything, if it's anything that makes sense to feedback, then I would go to the Node.js repo and file a bug. But so far, anything that's kind of has a significant impact to our production, it would end up being an issue that many people out there also run into. So by the time we notice and get our stuff in line, someone else probably already found an issue on a Node.js repo. But anything small, generally we don't really
makes sense.
Put much effort into that.
Great. Well, I have a couple more comments on telemetry based on our diagnostic summit, but I'll hold those to discussion that we can take offline and perhaps discuss in person at diagnostics. I wanted to give Nikolai the floor for feedback on version usage.
Hey, thank you. Actually, we do the same like a Walmart for our e-commerce customers, and we have a 6 version and 8 version. We are excited to have 8 version in production because we increased our performance since our application have integration of a lot of NPM packages, and the most time applications was spending in NPM. After 8 version, we reached the less impact on performance from NPM packages and boosted our performance. That's what amazing.
So that would be an NPM 5 upgrade, essentially, right?
Right. And actually, turbofan ignition, boost performance
significantly. Wow, that's great.
It's good to hear that. That does lead me to one question. Do any of you guys ever install later versions of NPM, or do you generally stick to what's shipped with Node?
We actually fix a version. For example, for our CI/CD, we will lock the NPM to 3.8 and we would lock it to that for a while. Even if Node release with a new version of NPM, we would actually install the version we've locked internally, because that gives us a more predictable environment in case something goes wrong and CI/CD or functional test goes wrong. So we periodically we go in and we would actually update the NPM version internally.
This is Aaron. I generally stick with the one that's shipped unless I accidentally upgrade.
So we sound like we have a different workflow. We have a separate install and build server for this. And so we manage it separate from our actual application. So whatever the build server has set up and configured is what's going to be used to install things.
Okay, and is that tied to the Node version or just installed separately?
It's installed separately unless configured for your application to require a specific version.
Okay.
I'd also be interested, is anyone actually using Yarn either for dev or production?
We try, but Yarn has some issues that our build generally doesn't work well.
Okay.
We also, oh, sorry, I'm just agreeing.
Yeah, one more thing I want to add is that from Node 6 to Node 8, in my testing with our real-world applications, we saw a 60% improvement in performance in our server-side rendering with React.js.
Nice.
Yeah, that's significant for sure.
Wow. All right. Well, let's move on to the next question. The big one here is primary use cases for Node. We touched on it a little bit. Joel mentioned the SOA infrastructure. We definitely had strong sort of corroboration of backend APIs and microservices APIs with sort of a sampling of other things. Just wanted to confirm that is the type of infrastructure, as Michael mentioned. We prioritize benchmarking those things first. I guess let me ask the negative question. Is there something that you're using Node for that isn't captured in what you've seen for the primary use cases?
I think these are use cases that cover what we use. One of the things that a lot of our internal teams that they've been asking. Most of our backend services are implemented in Java, and I've had quite a few people constantly asking me, can I use Node to write my services? And I need to connect to MongoDB or Oracle DB and things like that. And we've had a mixed experience and results when using Node and try to connect to DB from Node directly. So that's one area that we want to put more effort or more research into to see how well it is to use Node as a direct platform to connect to our backend databases. Because right now, most of our apps, when they need to connect to DB, they actually go through a service that's written in Java.
Yeah, and that's actually a bit of a surprise to me. So I'd be interested in, maybe not this time because we don't have that much time left, but to sort of dig into that experience at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'll flag that. We also had discussions at the Diagnostic Summit that touched on pooling, right? So a couple pain points around pooling, and I wonder if it's pooling and pooling mechanisms that are the pain point, or if it's computational intensive. I'll flag that as a topic for deeper discussion.
Sounds good.
Aaron, Nikolai, and Bradley, is there anything you wanted to add there?
Most of what I've seen is back-end API services. Traditionally, the IBMI is seen as a legacy platform. It holds a lot of the business's data, and people want to get at that data. So they latch on web services, RESTful or other, and they use Node to do that.
Great.
So for us, we are starting to write more full service applications in Node. We in particular have had good experiences with connecting to Cassandra using Node. So that's our main database of choice.
Great. Well, maybe I'll capture that, and we can sort of peel back the onion a bit there and see, if it is pooling or if it is, abstraction layers like ORMs in that, the database concept is definitely database challenge is definitely an area that I've heard multiple times. Bradley, touching on your experience in backend services APIs versus kind of build services, is there anything in building services at scale that you see that differs greatly from any other backend service APIs?
The way we manage them is very different. We don't auto scale our build services. So we have limited time because we are fine with builds taking a significant amount of time normally. We have that service-oriented architecture with immutable builds, so rolling back is pretty easy, and the actual performance of the build itself is minimal.
Got it. Makes sense. All right, so we're almost at the top of the hour. I want to let anyone who really needs to go, have an opportunity to have a final word. Though I would love to continue for another 15 minutes or so, since we got started a little bit late. I'm happy to stick around. Does anyone have a hard stop here at the top of the hour?
This is Aaron. I do have to leave at the top.
Okay. Aaron, before we wrap up, I want to give you, the floor to have any, closing thoughts as regards to, benchmarking and your needs there.
Sure. First off, honored to be on this call. Thanks for allowing me. And I'm hoping that I can add to the mix by doing some benchmark testing on the IBMI platform. I'll work with Michael to get that information, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Sounds good, and look forward to having your insight in the future discussions as well. I think so far this has been really good. So
awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron, for taking the time today. Really appreciate that. And go through a few more of these questions. So, kind of I guess a surprising mediocre response, not unsurprising, from real world experience. But one of those things that, we always hope folks have more infrastructure, more visibility around, especially when we're sharing, the context of something like our building benchmarking infrastructure in Node. So the infrastructure in place for tracking performance of application. Joel, you mentioned that you have extensive logging in terms of regressions. Where does Walmart stand on performance tracking at scale on applications?
Yeah, we actually have a fair amount of performance tracking. Through our application, we have a logging to a Splunk. So Walmart use Splunk for general application logging. And the way that works is that the application actually logs to a file on disk, and then we use a log forwarder to forward those logs to the Splunk backend. And in that, it's less about performance, but more about the application health and what's going on, and monitoring our usage on our website. And we also have our in-house APM infrastructure that's based on Kafka. So, and I implemented a library that let the application report matrix to a separate node process, an APM process. So the application would report event to the APM process, and the APM processor would use a matrix library to calculate numbers, and then report that into the Kafka every minute, and those are plot on a dashboard for the applications. And our cloud environment also allows our dashboard to monitor CPU and memory usage, and we monitor those pretty closely. And in our APM matrix reporting, one of the things we do is actually we log the event loop latency, and we log that back into the APM. And one of the strange things we see sometimes that we would see some events that actually fires 24 hours later. So that's one of the mystery that I still haven't figured out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a high P99. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like something where, yeah, it's off by a day, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But so I've seen it's not a lot to raise an alarm, but sometimes in our APM dashboard we will see event loop latency that fires in minutes or hours and up to like 24 hours. So it's really strange, but it's not significant to really have a meaningful data to look into.
But right. It can't be that it's blocked the event loop for that amount of time, right? Because other things are going, right?
Yeah, the other things are still going. So generally, this is when we do network call,
right?
We see this. Right? We make a service call, then we see this.
Yeah, so you wouldn't necessarily have that being an event loop blocker, but that could very reasonably be something that's sitting on the event loop and with a unresolved callback. At Voxer, we had a lot in our infrastructure that would basically cut off any stragglers like that, where we'd pull things out that weren't resolving, and the biggest culprit there was long-running database, things that were call outs to react in that situation that would get backed up and just take a long time to resolve. Interesting. Bradley, how about GoDaddy?
So we do have APMs running on most of our stuff. We've actually had to turn them off in some cases in production due to the APMs leaking memory essentially while they try to track events, unfortunately. We've worked with some of them trying to get it fully fixed and just ended up keeping them turned off and relying on logging for some things, which is unfortunate. Our new recommendation is also to include Node report in all of your green applications, if possible. So we're also getting some reports from that starting as of last month or so.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Right on. Nikolai?
We are using Splunk for logging, using New Relic as monitoring systems, and actually to be ready for Black Friday days, what we are doing, we decided to, if we are implementing any NPM package, we need to gather results of impact on performance locally. After that, you make a deploy on staging environment using Gmeter and the New Relic. We check the performance impact there. We are carrying about the performance impact of New Relic as well. So monitoring systems make a huge impact on performance. I really like to hear about solution about separate process for get metrics and push to Kafka. So this is a good idea.
Nice. Tierney, do you want to put on your node source hat?
Yeah, I was just about to raise my hand to do that. So for our platform, with my node source hat on, for our platform, we run on our other product, NSolid, which does a lot of the kind of APM stuff, also security monitoring. We also do have one of our dashboards, I think, set up into the tick stack. I believe that's what it's called. And so we kind of go and pipe that information out to that and kind of monitor through that. And I also believe we connect to our infrastructure team is set up. I can't remember, Kibana, I believe is the tool in AWS to help monitor logging.
Great, thank you. All right, so I don't know if dialect is important. I did really find the optimization pass of running JavaScript before deploy. Bradley mentioned the entire Webpack infrastructure there. I'd love to hear more about that, Bradley, and why it's needed in the stack, or how you're using it.
So it's not just Webpack. That was just one of the things that's missing on that benchmark. So we actually do a bunch of things ahead of time on all these build farms. In particular, pre-processing React and doing translations, or palette managing for our themes. So GoDaddy actually has a reseller option. So we actually have, builds that take around a day or so just to generate our color palettes. And so we have a few customized servers that do this behavior. We actually run those more often than our Webpack builds. Webpack builds are occurring whenever we generate a new image that we're going to put into dev, test, or prod. And those happen, on everything pretty much. Not just things that are purely in the front end. We also do them on the back end. So I'm not entirely sure what you're asking, I guess.
Michael, do you want to take that question?
Sure.
And sort of share what the benchmarking working group, rather than me interjecting, my thoughts here, what the benchmarking group is trying to accomplish with this.
Yeah, well, this question was around, what kind of things do you do to pre-process before you deploy it to Node.js? And I think it's, driven by part of the, understanding the web tooling flow.
Right.
And we called out, the couple of the common things like minification, bundling, obfuscation, and then just, let people also fill in under other what else they did. So I guess I was surprised by how high the obfuscation was. So I wonder, is anybody anybody of the end users on the call here, is that something you guys do use?
We do not.
Node source hat, no, we don't.
We don't, but we don't let our source maps be available to the general public.
For us, generally, we do minification and bundling only for the front-end code. We don't do obfuscation. On the Node side, when we write code, me personally, I don't like write code that gets babbled if I transpile when I run it on Node, because debugging that is kind of tricky sometimes, and I hate setting up source map myself. So generally, when I write code that's for the Node server only, I would use whatever ES6 the feature that Node version supports. And I've been thinking about what we can do about this actually, and I know that Facebook has that project. I forgot what it's called, but what they do is they take your JavaScript and do some kind of static analysis on it, and and eliminate some dead code based on that. But I'm not sure what's the status of that project myself.
Are you talking about prepack?
I believe so, yeah.
So we've looked at prepack and we actually saw what it would do, and it's not ready for production anytime soon that we can tell. We're not really doing any sort of ahead of time stuff for transpilation in order to get bundling or minification on the node side. This is more to get features or source code transforms like JSX or strange presets that are not available in Node currently.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know.
All right, so we probably have time for one more brief topic. And Michael, rather than me taking and deciding that, I wanted to give you the opportunity to choose between the couple of topics that we could go into are what have folks seen performance regressions, then the features that impact the application the most, and computational workloads. Which would you like to choose?
Why don't we choose computational workloads?
Great.
I have a bit of an interest on that side, so.
Me too. So, the single-threaded and that's the sort of reveal of the outcome of this. All right, so vast majority of folks shared that they were not impacted by single-threaded workflows. Everybody here is doing a wide variety of workflows. So are there areas where Node single threading is getting in the way today that you would love to see improvements on? Let me start with, actually, let me start with Nikolai, since we've had Bradley and Joel speak so much. Nikolai, what are the instances where you're looking for computationally friendly models inside of Node?
Hey, I guess the computation on JavaScript. So, for example, when you're doing deep merge, deep cloning, any minification of HTML, so anything that need to use CPU, that is actually a bottleneck.
And is that something that you think can be like, what sort of granularity would the parallelism need to have? I mean, some of the models like workers, it's kind of a message passing model. Is that something where that's a good fit with those particular use cases or not?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay, so it's something where you could fairly easily like portion off, like just go off and do this and give me the answer without having to work, like share too much data or share too much interaction with other parts that are doing it as well.
Yeah, the easiest way to do this.
Okay, I think it would be good to, again, maybe offline, there's work in the workers working group to kind of sort of narrow down the use cases where it would be useful to have this kind of model. So if maybe we could get some more details on those ones that you have in mind, that would be quite useful.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is a burning question for the platform right now. So very interesting. Bradley, I know you've been around, and the team at GoDaddy has a lot of experience. So you're very familiar with service to service offloading. And I'd just love to get your input on, where focusing in on that middle ground between, a worker workflow and a, separated service workflow, and where you might take advantage of a more compute-friendly on Node instance, if you had it.
So I can actually say we don't have major issues with CPU usage, but we're also doing a very large amount of caching to avoid it, even having to address it. We do have some use cases that would benefit greatly from having workers or something where we could use shared array buffer between processes. We spin up a bunch of processes in our build step, and we also have a very, very large computation for post-mortem that we're starting to use for memory usage. And right now we're in the hours for compute time on a large process. Having that be smaller, we don't want to rewrite all these tools that are creating these JavaScript ASTs and things, or the JavaScript heap snapshot format into C++ or anything. So we're okay with it being hours, but it would be nice if it wasn't.
Right on.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like maybe, I'll start another thread through email, at least to start with, to say it sounds like at least a couple of you guys have other, concrete use cases, and that would be valuable input to the effort that's going over there. So I'll follow up and to see if we can get some more, actually document those in writing would be great.
Hey, so I want to add a little bit to the single thread thing.
Yeah.
So the Node.js single thread definitely is something that we're constantly trying to have to work around with. Mm-hmm. Because at Walmart, because at Walmart we are e-commerce, so server-side rendering is very important for us because we need the SEO.
Right.
And since we switched to React, and React's server-side rendering is synchronous.
Right.
So that is a big problem for us in all our web server in Node.js, because our Node server can only do 1 to 2 requests per second if it's doing server-side rendering. So that's one thing. That's one thing I spend significant time on in optimizing React server-side rendering, and which is why React 16 was very important for us, because it server-side rendering improved significantly. And I've worked experiment with things like using some modules out there that offers a thread by using native code in Node.js, and try to offload server-side rendering to a separate thread, and then leave the main thread open to answer to some of the smaller, lighter weight requests. And also experiment with spawning a dedicated process in Node that's only do server-side rendering. So all of them didn't quite really work out that well. So we're continuously putting the server-side rendering on the main thread. And another thing that is that due to the single threads, a lot of the things that I do is, for example, logging and APM monitoring. I separate out those into dedicated process. For example, our APM reporting is a dedicated separate node process, whereas the main apps are all just by using a local message passing to send events, and then the log is the main app just writes the log to the disk and have a dedicated log forwarding process to forward them to Splunk.
Makes sense. Bradley, real quick, I'm going to have to begin sort of shaving time here.
I just forgot to mention, yes, we do have separate processes for logging and also diagnostics on all of our machines, just like them.
Great. Yeah, that's a well-proven pattern for Node. Fantastic. Tierney, I wanted to give you an opportunity to chime in here, and if you don't have much to add with your node source hat, also let you start the final words.
I don't have anything much to add with my node source hat. Is there any final words you'd like me to give?
Final words in terms of your node source and benchmarking, and we're just going to sort of go around the horn, wrap it up.
Okay. Yeah. So, at node source, benchmarking is super important to us. And it's, a lot of the things that y'all have touched on are kind of the pains we're beginning to hit and we try to address for others. So yeah, that's really all I have to add.
Great. Bradley, final thoughts, benchmarking.
It would be good to keep this going, especially it's a motivating feature to get us onto new LTS, which in the past has been a problem, but Node 8 was actually fairly smooth.
Great. I'll leave that to Michael to respond at the end here. Joel.
Yeah, so since we migrated to Node and at Walmart, it's been a major success for us because our development and deployment has been significantly simplified and much easier and faster. Our developers comes on board and is able to contribute code on the first day. And we obviously the fact that Google and then Node.js working group is making such an active development and constantly pumping out so much improvement is a major advantage for us. For example, the upgrade from Node 6 to Node 8 was a huge bump in performance for us. Yeah. So yeah, this is very good, and it's very good to hear the users case from others, and it's awesome to to see that some of the patterns that we adopt is also the same pattern others use.
Nice, that's a good one. Nikolai.
Just want to add that it's really nice to have the surveys, and actually each survey covers the next topics on summit conference. So there's a lot of black boxes, for example, Event Loop and other are covered now. And I really excited that you started to develop async hooks. Mm-hmm. This is a best platform for next generation tooling for Node.js. Nice. I know the issue with promises now. I hope it will be better. You will fix it. And it's nice that now you are checking you do deep check of Node.js platform performance inside. It's pretty cool.
Great. Michael Dawson for the benchmarking working group.
Right. I guess I'm gonna, say thanks to everybody who spent the time to come and talk about this issue. I think we could spend more time to go through even more of the questions. We're going to, I know in the end user feedback group, digest the data, put it in a place where we can publicize, and then the discussion will start in the benchmarking work group. We may then ask if people are here are interested to come and meet with the larger benchmarking work group to do a bit more of a deep dive. I can see as a next step. And then just more generally, I think this discussion, in my mind was very valuable, helped, lend insight into this issue. I have some ideas for like some of the next discussions we can have. So I think diagnostics, there was basically a summit in Ottawa here just earlier this week. And I think out of that, there's a number of questions that would be valuable to discuss. But I also want to say, for the end users, if you have particular topics that you want to have put on, have us do a session on as well, think about that, add it to the list. And, hopefully we can have a regular cadence of, once a month or whatever that makes sense to get back together, pick one of the topics that we think is the one we next want to talk about and make this an ongoing relationship to get together and share information.
Thank you, Michael. So, on the user feedback initiative, our role is, to bring end users and the project together. So, in facilitating that, I think kind of managing expectations, detailed stuff around benchmarking. I hope you'll go and watch the benchmarking work group and you can continue diving deep into benchmarking needs and how you can contribute to the benchmarking work that's done in the Node.js project with the benchmarking working group. And in terms of user feedback, it's our role to connect the dots and be a bi-directional channel through the Node project to yourselves in the end user community, and we're going to take and replicate conceptually the things that we've done with benchmarking, with diagnostics. There's a lot of exciting stuff coming in diagnostics, a lot of community feedback that we need to make the diagnostics and prioritize the diagnostics work that folks are excited to go work on. So we appreciate your feedback, and hope we'll get together again soon and continue this discussion both here on and on GitHub.
Yeah,
Thanks, everybody.
Just want to add to that is I think as a group, as the user feedback group here, we could choose to do another session on benchmarking if we want to. We'll have some other ideas, but I think Dan's pitch to get involved in the benchmarking work group, if that's of interest, is a really good one. It meets every other week. Mondays, there's a rotating call Mondays and Tuesdays, but you can go to the foundation calendar to see when. It's open to anybody who has an interest in sort of either sharing information, sharing things, the use cases that they have, or helping to actually implement the different benchmarks and stuff. So yeah, if you want to get involved in, that's great. Or if you, in terms of the very specific actions, you can either open issues there or contact me to sort of make those move forward as well.
Fantastic. Well, thanks everybody for taking time and for staying a little bit longer. That was extremely valuable, and I think that really accomplished everything I'd hoped to for our public session, and the kind of interaction that we're doing for the Node.js project. So thanks everybody for taking the time, and we'll hopefully see you soon.
Yeah, looking forward to talking to you guys in the next session.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Bye. Looking forward to meeting you guys at the IndexConf.
Yeah, we'll see you there.
Okay, bye. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Take care.
Talk to you later.